It's the golden age of WWE. Larger than life of fantasy. Step in the ring, feel history. Welcome to the golden WWE.
Perfect flexes to spitting gum and hitting it ever so perfectly. Today we're talking about Mr. Perfect here on the Golden Era podcast with Sean Mooney. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Steve. It's funny that you started that with the whole thing with the gum, because that's like the first thing I when I was watching some of the video, and I thought that was like such a Curt thing to do, because he was always chewing gum, and then he started doing the thing when he got in the ring and he would like spit it out and bat it into the crowd. I was like, what? You imagine you're out there, oh, I got Mr. Perfect's gum.
I was just going to ask you that. You imagine someone's like, listen, Jimmy, I have the gum.
Yeah, and I have my own gum story anyway, but we'll get to that.
Amazing to hear. But I was always very intrigued by Mr. Perfect because honestly, he would throw a pen in the air, he'd catch it. He'd throw the gum in the air, he'd swat it. He'd throw a towel in the air, Bobby would catch it. Like there was never a moment, unless it was edited for TV reasons, that it seemed like he wasn't being perfect. Now, for you, before we get into his career, I really want to talk about his personal relationship with you, because Mr. Perfect is one of those people everyone keeps talking about. But for you, what did Mr. Perfect mean to you personally? Curt Hennig.
Yeah, and I've mentioned it many, many times. Curt was one of my favorite people there. I had a few, but Curt was just such a good guy, and Master Ribber. That kind of was his, it followed him everywhere because he loved doing ribs, and some of them went a little far. But, and when you just got one-on-one with the guy, he was always like really interested in what you were up to. He would come into the studio and hang out. When I'd be doing the event center, he used to come in a lot to do promo stuff, during the time when he wasn't in the ring as much. And so I got to know him pretty well. And he was just, somebody at that level, and to really take the time, that genuinely was, just cool, like just would come in and just bullshit about whatever. And I also got to know his dad. I got to know Larry a bit because he would come to the events and was just always really complimentary to me. And I don't know why, because I wasn't one of the boys. I didn't, but he really liked what I did. And so in a sense there, I got to find out, how this all happened. And Larry was, just a really solid, guy that, had this tremendous career and very much old school. And, they growing up in Minnesota, and I'm sure you've heard about Robbinsdale High School, which was this, turned out to be this breeding ground for some of the greatest professional wrestlers ever. And during that era, and it makes sense, but, people Arso and Rick Rude and, all these guys came from there at the same time. That during that, they're all within a fewer, 5 or 6 years of each other. And it was because, the AWA was there. And a lot of these old school wrestler guys, kids went to the school. And then, they had an incredible athletic program there, as you can imagine, because these guys are all great athletes. And Curt was among them. He could do everything well. And as we know, with the moniker, and Bruce Pritchard tells the story of how they, came to the idea of him becoming Mr. Perfect. But, Curt was just really a great athlete and really excelled at as an amateur wrestler. And his dad, talks about, Larry talks about early on that he could see that, and that was his passion from the time he was a kid. And I'm sure it had a lot to do with the fact that he was just around the business so much, and that's what his father did. But that solid upbringing and that family, you could just tell, that it was all about family to him, and these strong ties that he had with these guys his entire life. and it just made him who he was. He was just very down to earth. Later in his career there, he became really great friends with Wade Boggs, the great
Yeah.
baseball player. That was, he inducted him into the Hall of Fame. And Wade was one of those kind of guys too. And attracted to each other in that sense, they liked to hunt and that kind of stuff. But the point of it being is he was just like this down to earth guy. All the fame and everything that came with it, and the money and everything like that. But he was just, when it all came down to it, Curt was just a really genuine guy. You got what. He was always who he was. You got what you got with him. It wasn't, anything, didn't big time you because he was around certain people. Anytime he saw you at any event, he'd come over, backstage, whatever it was. And he wouldn't just come in and do his interviews and then blow out of there. He was just always in a great mood, always kidding around. I don't ever remember. I'm sure there were dark times, but most of the time that I spent with him, it was just awesome. I was just he was like kind of like a big brother, kind of like to me, in the sense that I felt like that when you're around him.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, because
Yeah.
so many stories of wrestlers being either rude or just coming to work
Yeah.
and leaving. It sounds like he was having a good time while at work with, especially it seems like with you because, he's one of your favorites and any interaction on camera, it's great. Shut up, Mooney is a classic line
Yeah.
that a lot of people used on you, but perfect. He did it with extra love, it seems like.
Yeah.
And
Well, we've talked about that before too. Like like Bobby would say, "Who?"
yeah, who?
It was how they if they put you over, then they liked you. They didn't. You were in good favor with them in a sense. And the stuff like with Curt saying, "Shut up, Mooney," or even putting your name over. Just that was just that little sense of letting of putting you over. And and that's the way Curt was.
That's awesome because again, he is brought up so many different times as being one of the greatest of all times, and we'll get into
Mhm.
that discussion later on in the show. But the story, the myth of him coming into the WWF interviews and all that good stuff, but he brings his father. There's a sit down with Vince, and they're talking about what are you good at? Because they're trying to come up with names for this guy. What are you good
Mhm.
at? And he's like, I'm pretty good at everything.
Yeah.
But the myth about this is Terry Taylor is also going to be signed to the
Yeah.
WWE at the time. And one wrestler gets this perfect gimmick. He's the best at everything: darts, wrestling, bowling, baseball. The other guy gets turned into a half rooster man, the Red Rooster. Now, you were there. Can
Uh,
you clarify if there's any truth to these two wrestlers coming in? These gimmicks are already made, but they don't know who they're going to go to.
well, I have to. I'll be honest here. When I'm just looking through the notes and seeing that today, that the Rooster was considered to be, that Terry Taylor is considered to be Mr. Perfect. I'm honest to God, I never, ever,
Okay.
ever heard that. I don't know where that came from. And if it was true, then maybe I don't know, but it's not something that I ever heard. And I can't. And we've talked about Terry before, and he, a tremendous talent. I don't think that he ever really got his chance in the WWE. But if they would have considering that him as Mr. Perfect compared to Curt Hennig, uh, no, I think that Curt was an easy choice for that. I'm talking gimmick wise.
Mhm.
Both were great, good ring tacticians, but Curt, I certainly give the edge there. And if you ever saw a match of his, you would, I think you'd agree if he was in his peak condition when he wasn't dealing with a lot of the health issues that he had, a lot of the ailments that dogged him for a good part of his career. But yeah, when it came down to it, like you said, they're sitting in that room, and I would have loved to hear that conversation because what do you do? And he's like, I like to golf, I basketball, and well, what are you best at? And I'm like, I'm good at everything. I
Right.
could just hear him saying that, and then that perfect moniker moniker was born, and it certainly it played well. But as we, people have talked about many times, if you're going to have a gimmick like that, you better be able to live up to it. And Curt did,
All
pulled it
right.
off.
It's just so true because if you're perfect at everything and you suck at the ring, then well, immediately we start off on a
Right.
bad foot here. We're not doing a great job. But they did a great job introducing him to the WWF audience with vignettes.
Hmm.
We got baseball hitting home runs, we got strikes, we got darts, we have swimming with everything. But then I rewatched the Mr. Perfect documentary, and my
Hmm.
heart was shattered when Bruce Pritchard revealed that he did not just hit home runs and strikes and hitting the darts in the middle and swimming. No, those are all edited. Now he would eventually hit those moves or hit that shot, but
Hmm.
it took like 100 takes to get him. I was sad when I found that out today. I was this old when I found that out today.
Well, I think you're exaggerating a little bit here, Steve. Like hundreds of shots. No, no, and it was never that
10.
many.
We'll say 10.
Yes, but I remember, you know, uh, and think about it. A lot of that stuff was pretty crazy. But as Bruce tells the story, though, that that Curt really was really good at doing everything and doing extraordinary things. There's like the baseball thing, and he got up there and he hit a home run.
Yeah.
And Wade Boggs telling the story because that's why I think when they first started becoming friends, and they wanted, well, we got to get a ball player to come out, and Wade was a natural choice there. And he said, well, go in there. And he goes, I thought that what they're going to have to do, they'd have him hit the ball and it looked like it was a pretty good hit. And then they'd cut it and then they go back to Mr. Perfect. And they go, and he goes, and he hit a home run. I mean, now I don't know how many people have done that.
Hmm.
And, it's not easy to do. You got to really get a smack a ball. But as Bruce tells the story, though, Curt was really good at this stuff. And when they say, okay, let's try one, and we're going to shoot now, action, where he couldn't do it. And so what he would do is he just wouldn't tell Curt. They would just roll on everything once they started, even if he was practicing or whatever, which was because also, Curt would be messing around doing things between takes or something. And it would because of athleticism, it would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
Whether, like say for the example with the golf ball or something, and he would bounce the golf ball like Tiger Woods would do, and he would just be messing around, but he had this, hand-eye coordination or whatever, or he might do something with the basketball. And so they would just roll. And especially because a lot of the stuff was chance, but when you're at the other end of the court completely and you take a ball and do that and the general direction. Well, maybe if you do it 1,000 times, you might do it, but he might do it the third or fourth time
Yeah.
just because messing around. So that was a really good idea, but it also they'd end up getting these little nuggets of stuff that he was doing, and it would basically be kind of an outtake that they could use, and so that was really smart when they started doing that. But trying to do that was not easy
No.
to act to capture it on tape and be able to use it, like a 40-foot putt or something like that. Well, you could be there for hours trying to get it, within get this close, like bounces in,
Long shoots, maybe.
rims, yeah. So
Now, those are so much fun because,
yeah.
for a little while, for introductions of characters, we only saw this happen for a few people. Million Dollar Man received these vignettes, a few people in the past, but really this is, I feel like, the beginning where the Mountie and suddenly, the Bushwhackers get them and the Nasty Boys and Legion, everyone starts getting these vignettes introducing people to the audience. And it's a nice way because suddenly those are pre-tapes. The event
Yeah.
you're going to on Superstars and Primetime and Wrestling Challenge, that was shot a month ago. So in reality, that crowd has no idea who Mr. Perfect is until those vignettes stop playing on television. I thought it was a perfect way to introduce him to the audience. But he's a great talker. He's incredible on the microphone. But yet they kept putting managers with him. Is this just
Yeah.
because this is the time that everyone needs a manager, or is it Vince maybe being worried? Like, what do you mentally think why that keeps happening?
I don't know. I honestly, I look back that Curt didn't need one. And quickly a note on that. You talk about those vignettes is they were brilliant in a sense because as far as building the character, before Mr. Perfect made his debut, everybody was already, dying to see who this guy was, and they already knew what he was all about. It was a great way to introduce these characters so that when they did hit the ring, they were already over or they already had heat. And I thought those were brilliant, especially with like the ones Mr. Perfect. By the time that Curt actually, made his debut, um, he already had heat with people. He didn't have to keep build it up in the ring and build it up on TV every week for weeks and weeks and weeks. He already had heat, and that was a great way to do it. So anyway, the fact that Curt was a natural and he didn't need a manager. And then I don't know if Lanny was first. I don't know when they had the genius.
Yeah, you got the genius,
Yeah, and the genius,
you got
like,
Bobby Heenan, then you got Coach. So we'll kind of break them all down right now a little bit. But yeah, first, the genius. Everyone hates the genius. So you put him with anybody, you hate the wrestler. By the beginning, when Mr. Perfect first shows up, he doesn't have a manager. He's wearing like classic, just blue tights. He doesn't have his classic, I have it right here, his classic gear. Like, he's not wearing this. He's wearing blue tights, the underwear. But then eventually he gets the genius. And you're like, okay, I guess, but how does that in my brain fit? Like,
it didn't, and especially and I loved Lanny, and I guess to give him something to do. I don't know. They weren't, they didn't have big plans for him in the ring as the solo thing going, and would come out and do the poems. But it was one of those things where it just what did that add to the Perfect character? It really didn't. Now, Bobby might have made a little sense because Bobby is a heat generator, and just to turn it up, to 11. But none of that it didn't make any sense to me because Curt didn't need one. He was already a good which was you could see in the vignettes. So the idea behind that really didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Bobby, okay, I get it, make him part of the family or whatever, it just helps turn up that heat. But Lanny, I honestly, I still don't get it.
No, it's very shocking because again, you see all these vignettes, him with charisma, hitting all these shots and bowling and just everything. He has got charisma. And then out of nowhere, again, these managers are not in these vignettes with him. So he's being introduced by himself. When he shows up, he's by himself. He gets the genius. But while he has the genius, he does start a storyline with Hulk Hogan. And this actually kicks off something that's interesting because the genius holds a win, a W over Hulk Hogan on an episode of Saturday Night's Main Event by countout because Mr. Perfect got involved. So in reality, congratulations, genius. You did it, sir. You beat Hulk Hogan during the height of Hulkamania because of Mr. Perfect. So I guess he can say that.
It's in the W column. Okay, take it.
Doesn't matter how the W
how it got there.
Nope, not the asterisk. Don't look at that. But while Mr. Perfect does have a rivalry with Hulk Hogan, we're going to jump around, folks. We're not going to go in the timeline here. But with Hulk Hogan, Mr. Perfect steals the WWF Championship from Hulk Hogan. He brings it backstage and he smashes it to pieces with a hammer. And this is something I have never seen done before. What was the thought of this? Because this is huge. Like, someone's been injuring Hulk Hogan over the years, big guys, but someone has never taken his championship and smashed it into a million pieces.
Yeah, well, and you just said it. I mean, never been done for. How dare you? I mean, really? And it wasn't just an affront to Hulk Hogan. It was to that championship, to how dare you? But the arrogance and that the confidence was what kind of shined through for that character. So I think it was something that got people. It was different, and certainly raised the heat factor. Um, I still, wonder why that Curt didn't get that opportunity though to really wear that strap. It never really happened, and I don't even know if there was a real discussion about it. But because I think that he certainly could stand toe to toe with someone like Hulk Hogan and have a good run.
Well,
As we
Mr.
saw.
Perfect, Mr. Perfect's on a list.
Yeah.
Anytime someone makes a top 10 list of wrestlers who never won the world title, Mr. Perfect is usually one or two. $1 Million Man's up there as well.
Right.
I don't count him stealing it with double referee. Sorry, folks. But with Mr. Perfect, he's on that list. And with a rivalry with Hulk Hogan, though, in 1990, we are inching our way to WrestleMania 6 to have Hogan take on Warrior. So obviously, there's no time for Perfect to get a championship and then flip it over.
Yeah.
So but before we jump into why Curt was never a world champion, the rumor, as long as I can remember, was the Smash WWF Championship was actually the WWF Hardcore Championship that Mankind was handed over to in 1998 by Vince McMahon because it was all smashed up, it was duct taped, and it had Hardcore. I believe that rumor up until I heard Bruce Pritchard kind of say, I don't think that's true. What were your thoughts when you years later would abruptly see Attitude Era things and you're seeing like, is that the world title that Perfect smashed?
Yeah. That I feel the same way. Because it was, well, there was a separation of time there, but you wonder, like, was it in back somewhere? Let's pull this thing out again. Yeah. So and Bruce is the source. I mean, really, he was there, and so I got to go along with that. But it did make you wonder.
Yeah,
that they didn't want to waste a belt or something. Those things are expensive. I don't know.
Don't get another one. Just buy one and smash a new one.
Yeah, but and people, that would be a really interesting conversation to have with some of these people that are the aficionados of these championship belts and these collectors. That I'm sure that would, if that was true, imagine the lore of that belt. I think it in its condition, whatever, it would be worth even more.
Oh yeah,
if that was attached to it. So
I wonder.
It's an interesting take on it. But yeah,
it was bizarre because also you could think that like, oh, you're kind of in the Attitude Era. You're saying like death to the winged championship. We have a new world title, Steve Austin. So we're kind of burying the old by giving Mankind a fake hardcore title with the winged eagle title.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a slap in the face to the past, but also like, hey, let's create some lore here because this is, as long as I can remember, thinking like, oh, why? Because Mr. Perfect smashes one here. 8 years later. It's smashed. It is the same title, but I guess, we'll have to clarify it's not the Hardcore Championship. But Mr. Perfect smashing it, it's never been done before. We still haven't seen that up until today where someone takes someone else's championship. We've seen people throw them over bridges and, try to blow them up and set them on fire, but we have never seen someone smash them. And it really, I think, established Mr. Perfect as a player because no one one-ups Hogan. Usually
that's right, the gall. Yeah.
It's a big dude, like Earthquake, smushing you in the Brother Love show. Oh, there's Brother Love right there. Or Andre, ripping the necklace off him. Like, there's just much more here to Mr. Perfect.
Sacrilege, I think we can call it.
But I just want to say congratulations to the Genius for beating Hulk Hogan. Mr. Perfect didn't do it, but the Genius did. So
that's right.
W column there. Though with Mr. Perfect and the Genius, they had a nice little run there. But as time would go on, Mr. Perfect heads into WrestleMania 6. 1990, Sky Dome, Hogan vs. Warrior is the main event. Huge, huge night. But Mr. Perfect is undefeated heading into this. And Mr. Perfect has a rivalry with Brutus the Barber Beefcake. Beefcake cut the Genius's hair at the Royal Rumble, and Perfect attacked him, and we are off to the races.
Yeah.
But Beefcake beats Perfect's undefeated streak.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't know, Beefcake's a friend of Hulk Hogan's. Do you believe that Hogan said, you know what we should do? We should beat Mr. Perfect, and it should be Beefcake. Because Hogan's not going to do it because he's off with Warrior. After that, he comes back and fights Earthquake. So do you think Hogan got involved here and was like, hey, my buddy should beat him?
I think in most cases, and I've had many conversations with Brutus and over the years, and yeah, and I think he credits a lot of his success in the WWE to his good friend.
Hmm.
Fortunately, they didn't. They had a major falling out, and I don't think that ever really got mended. But I think at the time, yeah, I think that probably had something to do with it. I also, I can't help but wonder, what was, Curt in the doghouse for something like that, or for a little punishment. I don't know, but it shocked a lot of people. I mean, I don't think anybody thought that was going to happen. But that was another thing they love to do too, Steve, is that they would like to do the unexpected.
Mm.
They that you would once in a while just be able just to throw you off kilter because everybody would you would think you'd follow what you'd expect storyline. Of course, if Mr. Perfect's going to go in there and he's this arrogant and he's undefeated, and you're going to let someone like Brutus the Barber Beefcake beat him. And I think they like to do that once in a while, and also it had something to do. Maybe they had some plans down the road, but maybe they for Brutus and Curt to do something or bring the connection of Hulk into it. I don't know, but that one was tough to swallow. I think a lot of people were like, "Really? Come on, what happened here?" And they like, we're still talking about it. So I think that, yeah, I think that in most cases, whatever Brutus was involved in, the Hulkster had a say in it and helped push him. But that wasn't unusual in across the board. It just was where you fell on the card. Randy had a lot of influence too. So Lanny got a lot of opportunities to do things that and we've talked before. Lanny was good in the ring. I mean, I think he was a poffo. They came up, but he wasn't that, for whatever reason, didn't have that marquee, that charisma that was going to put him at a higher level. And it always helped to have a brother who was in that position. So that wasn't, yeah, that wasn't, crazy to think that the Hulkster wouldn't have had some influence. He had a lot of influence on what happened in the company.
I'm glad you said that, because my first evidence here for people who don't believe me with that question is we go back to the Royal Rumble in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
The rumor is that Mr. Perfect's supposed to win this Royal Rumble. Hulk Hogan, though, Hogan must pose. So Hogan is the one who ends up winning the 1990 Royal Rumble instead, tossing out Perfect, which then leads to Perfect losing to Beefcake, which is Hogan's friend. So in reality, is the idea that fans wanted Perfect to win the Royal Rumble and not Hulk Hogan? Or is this just people looking too deep into things because the Royal Rumble isn't something like where you get a championship match. Hogan's the world champion. No. We're in the height of Hulk Hogan. We're in the Hulkamania. Like, it's stupid to think anyone else would win besides Hogan at this point in time.
Yeah, but like you said, it wasn't like there's so much on the line in something like that. But it's a great opportunity to put one of your people over. And Curt, I don't remember what he entered in. I think he was in there for a long time, wasn't there? Was I can't remember who he was number.
Honestly,
entered number
I think
30.
Number 30, yeah.
Oh, okay, so it was later.
Yeah, 91 he does that.
But it was an opportunity, I think, to put him over more. And for whatever reason, you know, the Hulkster has to win it. I don't know if he squats that idea because originally they were going to put Curt over. I don't know. I really don't. I don't know what it came down to with that, but you can rest assured that the Hulk would have had to sign off on it for it to happen. So to say that he didn't have influence and it was all a Vince decision, I doubt it.
Well, it's crazy because they do have the face-to-face with Warrior and Hogan in the match. And then Warrior, he's out. He gets tossed out of the Royal Rumble. And then Hogan could have probably done the same thing. We could have just kept equal footing. And I'm just thinking politics-wise, Hulk Hogan's like, well, if I'm going to lose at WrestleMania, I'm winning here, folks, because I'm going to go in super strong. And so when this me spitballing that, I'm thinking Hogan's going to win because it's Hogan's time. It's Hogan's era. He can say whatever he wants. And Vince is like, let's do it. And so I can imagine that happening here. So that's my exhibit A here with Hogan.
Yeah, and you see that all the time. I think that was, kind of a rot disease with, like WCW. You had a few guys at the top there and they just kept, putting themselves over. And that can hurt you. And I think in some cases like this, that, having so much influence in a company can hurt as far as getting other people established. And I don't think it's good for business. And you got to spread the wealth. But even at this point in time, I know that, Vince is looking, we've got to spread this out. He keeps trying to find people that are going to be able to carry the load and keep, these arenas with people in the seats. And they're running a lot of shows and Hulk can't be everywhere. And, so I think that, as far as the business sense here, you got to be careful when somebody has that much influence, but at the same time, you can't piss them off either. So I think it was kind of a fine line that Vince had to walk, because you had to keep the guy in the yellow tights happy, and at the same time try and grow the roster where you've got more guys that can appear at the top of the card. So it was it was a dance, I think, for him.
You make a really good point.
Try and keep everybody happy.
I never even thought of that way, because Hogan, you have Warrior being the next guy coming up. All right, Warrior's going to beat Hogan at WrestleMania 6.
Right, but remember, they're not sure of him either.
Yes,
at the time too.
Yes.
And so.
And then they tried it with Savage a year ago, but they had to have Hogan next to him. Every time Hogan would walk away to go do a movie or something, business would dip. So then Vince would call Hogan, hey, we got to call you, come back. Business goes up. So in reality, Hogan's a very smart man. Let's keep everyone down here, and I stay up here. Every time I leave, these people try to level up, but they can't. So you call me back, and I get more money, and I get more opportunities. Very smart business plan for him.
It would. Step away. How can I miss you if you're still here? So yeah, it worked out great, and did for a while. I mean, those years there, they,
on fire.
Terry knew it. Terry knew their phone's gonna ring. He just knew it. And I can go do whatever I want to do. And if it works out, tremendous. That's awesome. But if it doesn't, I mean, this is always here. They're gonna need me. And then I can carve out a time where I go back, and then I got other things going on here, and they need me even more. And how many times he came back
over and over,
and what he had to do, so it was a great business plan for quite a while.
Yeah, it worked out for him. But, Mr. Perfect does not win the 1990 Royal Rumble. He loses the undefeated streak at WrestleMania 6. But also at that event, Warrior becomes world champion. That means he has to give up the Intercontinental title, because it wasn't title for some strange reason. But Warrior then relinquishes it. They have a tournament. Mr. Perfect wins the tournament to become the Intercontinental Champion, pinning Tito Santana in the finals. Now, why the hell do you have Perfect lose his undefeated streak to Beefcake to let him then win a tournament to become Intercontinental Champion?
Well, all you can say was that was some kind of make good. I don't know that we're going to give Brutus the win and hope everybody forgets it soon. which didn't happen. But did anybody doubt that Curt wasn't didn't deserve to have a belt on him?
Oh,
No, he made a great Intercontinental Champion.
one of the best.
And so him doing that, there was no question. People like, well, give it to him, So I think that turned out really to be a blip in a sense in his career, because at least at that time, that it was just kind of one of those things. Yeah, it happened, but could you 5 out of 5 times is how many times is Brutus going to go over? It's not going to happen. So he got it. He got the W, just like Lanny with the the Hulkster.
Don't
whatever.
disparage. Don't disparage.
Put that in. Put it in the bank.
Put it up there.
But yeah, I don't think him dropping that match to Brutus hurt his stature as far as how he was put on a card and the stature that he would be as far as did he deserve to be an Intercontinental Champion.
What's more even crazier, Exhibit B here, while I feel like Hulk Hogan's involved with this Beefcake Perfect situation, is because SummerSlam 1990, it's supposed to be Mr. Perfect defending the Intercontinental Championship against Brutus the Barber Beefcake. He's supposed to win, but he gets in a parasailing accident, which then replaces Beefcake with Texas Tornado. Texas Tornado beats Mr. Perfect at SummerSlam 1990 for the Intercontinental Championship. So you're telling me, maybe, that it was all a plan to have Beefcake beat Perfect, to have Perfect get the Intercontinental title, for Beefcake then to beat Perfect. Is that what we're all waiting for? Is that supposed to happen?
So you think that, maybe, but I think we're getting, way too, like we're psychics here as far as them planning. And, I believe at the time, this is where Curt was ailing. I mean, his back was in really bad shape. He was going to have to take some time off. And so that's why this was going to happen. So maybe they're thinking, okay, we've got to make it legit somehow. We can't just all of a sudden have Brutus come out of nowhere and then beat him and get the belt.
Mm-hmm.
So, that could have been part of the psychology of that they were laying the tracks prior to that. But yeah, that's what was supposed to happen. And as you know, as you mentioned, that Brutus had that horrific parasailing accident. Really, he's lucky he didn't die. That's how bad it was. I mean, I remember Terry Hulkster talking about how he couldn't breathe because his whole face had collapsed, and he put his fingers in his mouth to try and clear to give him an air hole, he could get oxygen. So I mean, it was the fact that he ever even came back is, to me, is still astounding. Have you ever seen those X-rays of the titanium, whatever, in his face? I mean, his entire face was really just reconstructed. But yeah, that's unfortunate because that was the moment, that was the peak of Brutus's career. That would have been the absolute peak of his career. But unfortunately, that's what happened, and things changed, and they didn't miss a beat. That's just how it worked. And I think it was better.
I agree. I love the Texas Tornado, so I have no problems with him beating Perfect here at SummerSlam 1990.
Yeah.
Of course, Perfect does eventually beat him again, becoming a 2-time Intercontinental Champion.
And that was on Kerry, because he wasn't able to what he needed to do as the Intercontinental Champion. And that's why that was short-lived. But he could have had a tremendous run.
True.
They really liked him. They really wanted him to do well there.
I thought he did well on television, but obviously we did a whole episode about what he was like backstage versus how he was in front of the camera. And I'll be honest, in front of the camera, I didn't see Texas Tornado ever suffering or look bad or bad performance. But when we did a whole episode about him for an hour, we talked about everything that happens backstage, and a lot more goes into the Texas Tornado story than we're going to elaborate on now because, this is a lot. So if you want to check that out, you go to our YouTube channel and check it out because we did a whole hour on Texas Tornado beating Perfect and this whole run. But Perfect to me, at this time, the Intercontinental title, we have seen it happen over the years. Macho Man gets it, he becomes world champion. Ultimate Warrior gets it, he becomes world champion. Mr. Perfect gets it, he does not become world champion.
Yeah.
Why do you feel, I know we're in the Hogan era, we're in good guy territory, so good guys are always your champion, but why do you think that out of everybody, even $1 Million Man, like why didn't Perfect get that world title? What is missing from that equation?
Well, that's a really great question because he did have it all. Uh, you know, few could generate the heat that he could generate. Few sold like he did. Few could move like he did in the ring. I mean, he did. He had it all. Um, but there's always these factors that for whatever reason that either they think they don't need it. Ted was one of those people, I think, that they felt, the guy sells for us no matter what. Might as well get, somebody else in there that can, if it's that we're going to do that, that needs a belt to make it, optimize it. Or that there was just something that Vince felt like he just didn't have it, that he needs to be champion. But I that Curt deserved that, and I think he would have made a great champion. I really do. I think that you look at when he was with the AWA, and he became their champion. And as Larry says, I never became champion. He beat Nick Bockwinkel, who had been the reigning champion forever seemed. And Curt stepped right into that role and was tremendous. And here you are, road now, and he is way beyond that. And the way he carried himself, and you put him up against anybody, didn't matter their size or what they did. You felt like Mr. Perfect could beat that guy. So whatever that final discussion was, whatever it was, but they felt that he didn't have it. He didn't have what they needed him to have, because at that point, Curt was still very dependable. I don't remember hearing of any, issues that were keeping him, or he wasn't showing up or something like that. That was never the case with him then. I don't know later on, but Curt was at a point where he would have been a great champion. Now, as far as the other physical things that were starting to happen with him, that might have had something to do with it too, because as we know, he had horrible back issues and would eventually step out and had a Lloyd's of London insurance policy that paid him for a while until Vince needed him again and persuaded him to come back. But so that's a great question. But I always felt, from my viewpoint, I thought he had it all, and I thought he would have been a great champion.
Agreed. I just think it was good guys are champions here, so that's what we're gonna do. Not until Ric Flair and even like Yokozuna were suddenly bad guys, you're world champions for a brief period of time. But yeah, he didn't have it, and he's still on that list of people you're like, well, why didn't he get it?
Why didn't he? Yeah.
Why didn't it happen though? But as I will always praise this event, he is the team captain. It's Survivor Series 1990. It's Mr. Perfect and all three members of Demolition versus Warrior, Legion of Doom, Texas Tornado, greatest Survivor Series ever. I will say it until the end of time.
I know.
Even Gobbledygooker, he was there, and he still will be praised and loved and forever in my house, especially around Thanksgiving when we leave out cookies and milk for the Gobbledygooker on Thanksgiving Eve. That's what we do in my house. That's why I hope you do the same thing. If you don't,
no.
No. Wow. All right. You're just
We just
rude.
eat the turkey.
All right,
Whatever.
fine. Intercontinental champion, though, when he is IC champion, he has Bobby Heenan as his manager, and we have seen these videos all day long. Newer fans are still baffled when Perfect is standing on the second rope and he throws a towel without Bobby looking, and Bobby just catches it midair. And you see this when he's walking to the ring. Every time they hit this, did Curt ever tell you what it was like to work with Bobby Heenan? Because I imagine it's like working with the greatest comedian of all time.
Yeah. And they played really well off each other, and they were, always just joking around. They were a great pair together. And you know, uh Bobby was a river, but he was a, it was more like jokes or stuff he would say. Curt was where, he actually did stuff to people, but they were naturals together. They, and genuinely loved being around each other. And So when the two of them together was like you said, it was in sync. The fact that they throw the towel and Bobby would just snatch it, uh, wouldn't even look. And when you're there, and that's the thing, and a lot of these, when you're with each other a lot, and you do these things, and it seems like right on the spot like that. Well, that probably, when at that point when you're seeing complete, disregard of any looking, or they've done that 100 times. So
Sure.
it's great that it comes off that way, but it's all been very rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed, and whether it was a real one or whatever. But that they've done that. The same thing with like Curt with the gum. Spitting them, boom, batting it off or what he was doing. That's through just repetition, reps, one after, over and over and over again. And that was just one of the things. I mean, that you see that in the ring all the time. You always wonder, like, how do these guys just go in there? They don't know what exactly they're going to do. No, because they've done it so many times. It's when somebody grabs your wrist, you know what you're going to go from there, or whatever you're going to do.
Yep.
So it's just that they're professionals, and when you do something like that at that level, you're really good at it.
Yeah. And they're so in sync though too, and so when you're
Mhm.
part of the Heenan family, you have Bobby Heenan always praising you forever, and the Heenan family has so many great members from the past, the present, and the future. But Mr. Perfect gets in a storyline with the Big Boss Man heading into WrestleMania 7 because Heenan keeps making fun of Big Boss Man's mother
I
on
know.
commentary over and over and over again. But then it gets a little controversial because we have a moment where police brutality is happening in the real world in media, and Mr. Perfect's taking on the Big Boss Man as a police officer. I believe this is Rodney King around at this time. So on you're backstage interviewing, and Perfect and Bobby Heenan are making like police beat down jokes about people being. He's like, you think that guy with the video camera in the bush is going to be hurt? Like, we're going to hurt you tonight, boss man. Like, holy shit. And we already
Yeah.
have Iraqi sympathizer shit going on too. Like, I didn't put this in the notes, but in reality, do you remember any of this and how heavy it was?
Yeah, and that's the thing when a lot of these storylines are walk the line of reality. That's how you make it work. That's how you get it over. But you also have to be careful about how far you push it, or how insensitive, in a sense, you go. And yeah, sometimes I don't think that people, like would measure, in a sense, where we were. And I do remember, doing some of those and going, man, but we didn't have the immediate feedback like we have today.
Hmm.
And so a lot of it to me would go out into the ether. It wasn't I mean, what was somebody going to do? Write a letter? That's kind of the way it
Yeah.
worked that way. We didn't have a phone line. People could call and say, I can't believe you guys did that. But it was just a general feeling. And you had to go by that because you didn't get that kind of feedback as today. If you do something, I mean, before you're off the air, you already could get feedback of people saying, I can't believe that, or, it worked,
Yeah.
you know. And you had that these guys of course have a natural sense. That's who they are. They're gifted psychologists, as I've said before. They know how to get reaction from people, and they know how they're going to react in a lot of this. But sometimes when you do, it's with the whole the Iraqi sympathizer, or you get into the terrorism stuff, as we saw. Um, it's a minefield, and you have to be really careful. And I remember back then, yeah, to me that was kind of pushing it. And like I said, but we didn't get that kind of feedback, so I never knew. I don't know how that reaction. You'd see it when you went to the arenas, but that was just really generated in heat, and you're like, awesome. You didn't know that these people really were thinking, you went too far with that.
Yeah, I just remember Bobby making those Rodney King jokes. Oh my Lord,
Yeah.
dude. Police brutality, and it's changed over the years, obviously, how you looked at these things. But in 91, when he's saying that, and it's so fresh in the news, it's so fresh
Hmm.
in media that police are beating down a man, and there's someone in the bushes videotaping it with a camcorder, and it changed the world for a lot of different reasons. But bringing it up into a storyline
Blow it
for the
up, man.
Intercontinental title at WrestleMania 7, when you already have alleged bomb threats over an Iraqi sympathizer character. Man, you're hitting too many checkbox here of how many times can we piss somebody off at one event, and I feel like that might have gone too far though. But that's how I felt about that. Bossman doesn't get the Intercontinental title. We go to SummerSlam 91. This is when Mr. Perfect's back. He cannot continue any longer. He has to step away from the ring. He fights Bret Hart in maybe the second greatest SummerSlam match of all time. The other one would
Hmm.
be Bret Hart versus Bulldog.
Bulldog,
Mr.
yeah.
Perfect goes into a match knowing he needs surgery, knowing he has bulging discs. Did you speak with him? Were you aware of how injured he was heading into this?
Well, didn't speak to him about it. It was something, you never really would, it's kind of I don't know, jinx thing or something like that. You never talk to anybody who was, dealing with something, an injury, especially that was impacting their performance, their career. But you could see um, how, what he was experiencing just by the way he moved. And I've said this before, that I've always been just astounded when I look back at some of these matches. And I think back to when um, my dog's barking. Uh,
I don't hear him.
yeah, I think back to looking at some of these guys in the ring during these matches and go, and knowing what they look like and were moving like before they went out there, and then you see what they do, and they're not not doing certain moves, they're not moving a certain way, not to do it's full out when they're out there. Dynamite Kid was the same way, that you knew that guy was destroyed and he was going out there. You never know it when they're out there in the ring. And you look at that match with Bret, and Curt's doing all these bridges and the snap suplexes, and you got to be thinking every time. Can you imagine every time he's doing that? And then Bret blocks in the sharpshooter, and uh, it's just amazing that you look at him, and how he performed. It's just amazing to me that these guys, that they would do it, and it was 100%. Went out there 100%, and maybe he was 40%, or wherever. You can't even imagine what he was going through. And pain is a great equalizer, as far as you can have that thought in your brain, I'm going to do something, if your body pain is supposed to stop you from doing that. And watch that match. Maybe you saw something in it. I did. I love seeing the comments, and sometimes that people say, "Well, I can't believe he didn't do this or he didn't do that." You're like, please, give me. If you knew that what a mess his back was then, and him going out there and just giving it his all. And then when he comes back, oh God, I mean, could probably wanted to crawl. I don't think that you can't. It didn't help his physical condition. So that's what makes that match to me even more amazing, Steve, is what condition he was in, and then he pulled that performance off
I
with Bret.
agree. I agree. When you are needing surgery and
Hmm.
you go out there and every step you take, you're wincing, and you can see in his face, it's like he was biting down a little bit
Well,
because he was walking. He's like,
but you also
every
think it's
step
yeah,
hurts.
and because people look at he's selling or something. I
Mm-mm.
don't think he had to sell much that day.
No, when you need a back surgery, like there's a
Yeah,
difference between like, oh, I hurt my hand, I'll just tape it up
yeah,
and go out there. No, your back is, kind of getting your legs going, kind of
yeah.
getting your whole body going. And
It's
he's
the
got to
center
keep,
of your whole movement.
and you're getting slammed
It is. I
over
mean,
and over on the
yeah.
thing that you need surgery on.
Yeah, imagine. I mean, everybody. I would, most people have had their back go out at some point in your life. Remember what that was like. That is the center of all your mobility, everything, from your legs, your arms, your every time you twist, everything. And imagine that is just on fire and every movement, and then you're doing that.
One of the
You're
best
not like
matches of
you're
all
not just
time.
trying to get off the couch.
Yeah. No, like I think I said before, when I sleep on my arm wrong and it hurts, and he's like, "Oh, well, I have bulging discs. I need back surgery, but let's go out and have one of the best matches of my career," which I
Yeah.
honestly think it is. Even Bret Hart said that, he told Curt, like, "Hey, man, like, I know you're hurt. You don't have to do this." And Curt
Mm.
told him, like, "No, I'm going out
Let's
there
go.
because you deserve this and you've worked your ass off. And if I don't go out there and you beat me and you beat somebody else, like, who cares if you beat Skinner? I love Skinner,
Yeah.
but who cares if you beat Skinner for the Intercontinental title? No, you're going to beat the guy who's had the title for the past 8 months. So
Mhm.
let's go out there and do it." And again, they stole the show. They had an amazing match. And that's when we also had Mr. Perfect with Coach, his other manager, his last manager, Coach. And it's a physical man who, think of a gym teacher when you were a kid. That is what Coach looks like. He's got the visor on, the big glasses, the sweatsuit, the whistle. Before Bill Alfonso used it every single match in ECW. Why go from genius to Bobby Heenan to Coach?
Coach. That, that's another one. I don't have any idea. Need him.
What
And
Jameson? We should have given him Jameson instead of Coach.
well, but yeah, it made no sense. The fact it was just so short-lived. I think everyone realized it. Shortly after.
Let's just erase that from people's brains. Like, put up the
Yeah,
Men in Black, race your brain,
yeah.
and boom, it's gone. Oh, all right, moving on. Mr. Perfect, though, does commentary from this point on. He's going to do commentary until Ric Flair comes in with Bobby Heenan, eventually becoming Ric Flair's executive consultant, involved in every damn Ric Flair storyline, from winning the world title at Royal Rumble 92 to apparently going to post naked photos of Miss Elizabeth up in the big screen at WrestleMania 8, even leading to SummerSlam 92, where it's going to be, what corner is Mr. Perfect in? Is it Ultimate Warrior or is it the Macho Man? Where did you land on Mr. Perfect being on commentary and then being executive consultant? I enjoyed it, but where you worked with him as a wrestler, what was it like working with him as a broadcast journalist?
Yeah, well, it was cool because he came to the studio more often, and so got to spend more time.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, well, it was out of necessity. He couldn't work, and so you know, I think I always liked that uh, aspect of it that Vince would keep the guys around,
Mm.
and that was kind of the way you could do it, keep them involved. And it was also, selfishly for Vince in the sense that they keep them near, and then at some point when I need them, I can put them back into, action, which we saw with Randy. Randy never wanted to be a commentator, but it was Vince made it attractive in a sense as far as the money went, and then he ended up being whenever they had an issue with somebody, whoever, Randy would, pop in, take care of it. And so that was part of it. But I don't think that Curt really ever enjoyed it, immensely. I mean, I think it was a good gig, but he always wanted to be in the ring, and I think it was really difficult for him during that period of time, even though he was getting well paid for, he had that insurance policy, the Lloyds of London, that he didn't have to work.
Mm.
But he loved being around the business. That was just his life, was with a lot of these guys. And so it gave him more chance, he could get home more. But I think that when it came down to it, he wanted to get back in the ring. And I think that when the opportunity came up, and maybe he wasn't ready at the time, but it was out of necessity and Vince made it worthwhile. So, I think it was just it was great to keep him there. I think that was one of the best aspects of it.
Yeah, I've watched, as I mentioned 1,000 times, I watched all the superstars from '92 on Peacock recently, and he's on commentary the whole time, the whole year, and he's very good with Vince McMahon.
Yeah, he was
they're
good.
A perfect pair, and that's where I started noticing. I'll try to do it. I did it, sort of, not really, but he was perfect at throwing it in the sky and catching it with Vince, and then he made Ric Flair more of a threat. Because Bobby Heenan was a goofball in a weasel costume sometimes. You'd see him do funny things. Mr. Perfect, we knew who he was. We knew what a killer he could be in the ring. So having him with Ric Flair really, I think, added more heat and more anger towards Ric Flair, because now Flair doesn't just have Bobby Heenan as a goofball manager. He's got a killer, Mr. Perfect, as his executive consultant. They have a stable, a faction growing just around Ric Flair. I really enjoyed it because like you said, it kept Mr. Perfect in the game, but it also kept him on air. But when they did need him, Survivor Series 92, they came calling, because we did a whole episode about it, is Warrior gets fired, he's out, well, we need someone to take his place. Mr. Perfect gets the call. Now, I don't know how much Mr. Perfect's being paid out of his insurance policy, but I can imagine it's a lot. So do you think, you don't have probably the answer, but do you think he was getting paid more money to be an active wrestler, or to sit at home collecting a big ass payday doing nothing except commentary?
Well, I've heard different amounts. I think I heard one time it was like $300,000 or something. I don't know.
Wow.
But I think that it was enough that he didn't have to work. But those guys at the time, especially at Curt's level, they could bring home $500,000 or more. But at the same time, you're thinking, well, but then I don't have to get my body beaten up every night, have that car wreck every night. So, and then he's getting paid more. He's getting paid extra for doing the commentary stuff too. I think probably at the time he was probably faster going back in there than he wanted to. But I think that Vince made it worthwhile, and I don't know how that all got settled. I don't know if Vince had to pay off the rest of the insurance policy or something, because if he's going to go back in the ring, I'm sure Lloyd's of London is not going to be happy about paying him. They're paying him basically not to wrestle anymore. So whatever that deal was, must have really been worth it to Curt for him to go back in, because he certainly wasn't 100% at that point.
No, and I've heard stories of like Rick Rude being on the same policy, where when he came back into the WWF in 97-ish, he couldn't take bumps because the insurance company is like, so you're going to work as a wrestler? He's like, no.
Okay.
Like, I'll do stuff, but I won't take bumps. Like, so we're going to pay you, and you're also going to get paid by them, but you're not going to wrestle? Like, and Rick Rude had an issue. That's why he couldn't wrestle in WCW toward the later time, because Eric Bischoff's like, I'm not paying off your insurance for you to wrestle. Like, it cost me more money to pay this off than for you to actually wrestle.
Right.
So, yeah. Mr. Perfect only lasted about a year in ring in the WWF from 93, and he went back on commentary in 94, and they tried to it's funny because on the Mr. Perfect documentary, they try to suggest that him and Hunter Hearst Helmsley, Triple H, were together forever. They're together for about like a week, maybe two. Yeah. And then Curt left for WCW while on Raw, they're airing old episodes of things that were taped where Mr. Perfect turns heel, or Wild Man Mark Mary joins up with Triple H, and then he goes off to WCW and eventually joins the NWO, like everybody who ever worked in the WWF.
Right.
And he enjoyed a nice run there for a while as just Curt Hennig, but then eventually he starts the Rap is Crap, where he becomes a Southern boy, Red Texas. What was their stable name? Something probably offensive, but apparently as time would go on, people would say he had the most fun being a Rap is Crap Texas cowboy in WCW than he was Mr. Perfect. I find that hard to believe.
Yeah, I find that hard to believe too, but Curt found fun wherever he went. So I'm sure that whatever the ride was, he made it the best it could possibly be. And also at that point, he wasn't the Mr. Perfect or the Curt Hennig we were used to seeing in the ring. Everything had taken its toll by the time he was down there. So I don't, maybe just from a standpoint of, the character he had fun with, but I can't imagine it was fun for him as far as him not being able to do what he was used to being able to do in the ring.
Mm-hmm. Before we wrap this whole Mr. Perfect episode out, I want to talk about ribs for a minute. One that I thought was hilarious that I want to know if you have any ones that no one's ever heard of. But this one is, in one match, Mr. Perfect brought a plastic eyedropper bottle and squirted fluid around the ring. The wrestlers panicked and someone shouted, "Who shit their pants?" Apparently he had a stink bomb in liquid form and he was spraying it around the ring. That to me is hilarious because you gotta be in the ring selling. Like, I'm fighting you as you smell like shit. But do you know any rib stories that maybe that weren't so evil that we could talk about?
Most of them were pretty evil.
All right, let's share an evil one.
He would go to, I always thought like a bag just for his rib stuff. You mentioned the whole stink bomb thing, and it was stuff he bought. It was like in a little dropper thing with it had a drop things, and you could, and he would, sprinkle it on people as they walk by, and it made, I think, I don't know if it was morning mist or something like that. It was just smelled like crap. I mean, like you thought somebody pooped their pants, and that was one of them that, if somebody annoyed him or whatever, or he just wanted to have a little rib, and it lasted too, it wasn't just that it would be a few minutes. And I heard that he did that on planes, a couple of times, and the whole, what that's like. I mean, and you're all breathing the same air, so they weren't real happy with him. But then he also they would take locks and chain things, whatever you had, like everybody used to carry around those Halliburton
the
briefcases,
wow,
and
really?
he would lock those to lockers in the arena, or he just nonstop, and you couldn't outrib him. And most of the boys at some point would just cry foul or just throw in the towel, like, I'm done, please. They would try and rib him back, and then he would come back 10 times worse. Where I think Pat Tanaka, is it?
Yep, Pat Tanaka.
Yeah. It talks about how he had a rental car that they got in because they had broken toothpicks off in the locks of Curt's rental car.
Oh,
and so he painted the headlights black on their rental car. So they get in the car and they can't, they're like, what the hell? The lights are on, but we can't see anything. And then they figured, okay, they see he painted, so they scrape that off. And then they go get in the car, and then they can't see through the windshield. There's this filmy something, and he'd taken motor oil and put it on the windshield. So you try and get that off. You put the water on, it makes it worse. And the way he tells the story is that So he has a brilliant idea at a gas can or something, put gas on the windshield, thinking it would cut through the oil, and that Perfect drives by and throws a match and lets the car goes up. Now, I don't know, that's crazy to me. I never heard that one. I just saw it, him telling the story. But really, it just, there were no limits sometimes. And also, you know, fecal matter, shall we say, would show up in people's bags and stuff. I mean, you didn't want to be on and to him, it wasn't, he wasn't being evil to him. It was just funny. It was just funny, just doing stuff like that. But, you know,
did he ever try to rib Mr. Fuji? Because I know Mr. Fuji
no,
is
you don't, you
notorious.
didn't. Oh, no, Mr. Fuji was supposedly number one.
Oh.
I remember Alfred told me a story one time that this guy, um, where they were in a locker room and the guy had a pocket knife that he kept playing with. And it was annoying Mr. Fuji. And he went over and he said, let me see the knife. And he goes, is it sharp? He goes, yeah, it's like a razor. And he goes, oh, really? And like sliced the guy's chest open, like not deep, but just like,
Enough.
and then, yeah, you're right. Gave it back to him, like, yeah, you didn't, Mr. Fuji was just brutal. I heard other stories, the stuff that they would, remember the, Nair, that's the hair remover stuff. I
Yep.
think it was called Nair,
Someone.
and doing things to people. So yeah, the land of ribs was intense. Where they would, Marty Jannetty said that one time Curt handcuffed his Halliburton to a a hotel drawer, and they had to catch a flight. So Marty took the whole drawer out. He couldn't get it off and had to go through. He says he went through, security. And they ended up getting bumped from the flight, so it kind of went back on Curt. But those guys, you're on the road for that long and you're bored out of your mind, and that's how they entertain themselves, by doing this stuff. And Curt was the king. Like I say, he did little stuff to me. I thank God. But I remember I told you the story when I did that pay-per-view with a wad of gum on my shoulder. He had come over and put his arm on me, his arm around me, and put a big wad of gum on my shoulder, and went through the entire pay-per-view with a wad of gum on my shoulder. Nobody said anything. So that was just some of the little things. I do an interview in one of those group interviews, and he would step on my foot, and I would be trying to get over to somebody with a microphone. And that was just Curt, and genuinely funny too. I mean, he was certainly as funny as Bobby, and the two of them together it was a comedy team too. So, bottom line, he just loved to have a good time. He really did, and it's just I'm glad that I didn't see those final years. And because I would have hated to see that. And it's tragic the way we lost them. But, drug use and is a big part of the industry, was then. Um, so that he is a statistic because of it. And those guys, we talk about the road that these guys were on. And you had something get you up, had something to get you to the gym and keep you in shape, and then go and alcohol, and then put something halcyon or something so you could sleep. It was just a horrible cycle, and got a hold of a lot of these guys, and they didn't get out of that hole. And
Yeah,
just
you're right.
terrible.
He died February 10th, 2003. He was 44. It was 6 weeks away from turning 45. Determined cocaine and steroids and painkillers was the reason of his death. So it's just sad to see that a lot of wrestlers, especially even from the golden era we've talked about before, none of them really die of. It's hard to find a lot of people who die of old age from the golden era.
Yeah.
And
Well, old age is 60s, unfortunately.
like
Yeah,
44
yeah.
years old. And he had a son, multiple children, but Curtis Axel, Michael McGillicuddy, Joe Hennig, all the different names. And he's a producer now in the WWE, so that's great that he can carry the lineage of his family along the way. But it was strange when they brought in his son and they didn't name him Joe Hennig. They named him Michael McGillicuddy. That was his wrestler's name, and then eventually he got to change it to Curtis Axel. At least they got to get it a little close because Curtis, Curt, Axel, the grandfather. So it's nice to see the lineage carried on there, but it was really strange when you bring in a second generation or a third generation wrestler and they don't use the last name, but some get to, some don't get to. Before we wrap this up though, like what are your thoughts on we did a whole hour and a half here about Mr. Perfect. We talked about the highs, the lows, the good times, the bad times. But when we shut this off, what do you want people to think about Mr. Perfect and Curt Hennig as a person? Not the wrestler, the person.
Well, and I think we should remember him as a wrestler too. But yeah, he was, Curt. Everybody that knew him would say, and I've never really heard people say anything, bad about him, except that some of his ribs were a little far.
True.
But he was just a fun-loving guy. He loved to laugh. He had a lot of guys that he was very loyal to. That whole gang from Robbinsdale. You hear, Barry Darsow talks about him to this day fondly, and a lot of these guys. And he was just family was what he was all about. I credit where he came from, and if anybody's ever met Larry Hennig, that where those values and the way he conducted himself and how much he loved the business and respected it. And he's truly one of those old school guys and loved the business, just loved the business. It was in his soul. And all the interactions I had with him were great. I mean, he was always so encouraging, and so I think that anybody that knew Curt loved him. And it's tragic the way it all ended up. And you hear, some of these people that talk to this day, and I saw something the other day from Wade Boggs talking to me, that he wished that Curt had called him, and he goes, and I feel to this day maybe I could have done something. And so it's just it's a tragedy the way it ended. 44, wow, if he could have just gotten through it, and on the other side. And so we always feel that, and then your life, get healthy again, but you have to get away from the business. He would have had to, especially at that time. So and I think overall though, you also have to credit for what he did for the business. He kept that old school alive during the time that he was here, and he was just tremendous. He was one of the, among the top ever. And people, I'm sure, like Bret Hart will tell you, and others that spent a lot of time in the ring with him, will say that he definitely was one of the best all the way around.
Agreed. And in 2002, he did come back into the WWF at the time at the Royal Rumble. When his music hit, the crowd went crazy, and he was around for a few months after that. But obviously, things happened. But one last rib story I want to bring up is he went to Road Warrior Animal's house for a Christmas party. He went upstairs, found a little...
This is the way you're going to wrap it up, Steve?
Yeah, he found a toilet. He took a giant shit in it. An Animal thought it was his son. He was so proud to show off the poop to everybody that, look, my son pooped in the body. It was just a giant Mr. Perfect turd. It was a perfect poop.
Yeah.
And that's how we wrap it up here.
That's awesome. Like a proud father. Look at this. Look at this. Look at my boy.
It's a giant Mr. Perfect turd. And that's how we wrap it up here, folks. No, not the sadness, the poop stories about Mr. Perfect. But Again, thank you everyone for enjoying us talking about the golden era of the WWE. Mr. Perfect was today's topic, but check out the past. We talked about Texas Tornado, the Hart Foundation, the British Bulldogs, Hogan versus Warrior, Savage, so many other people. But thank you again, Sean Mooney, for sharing your passionate stories today on the golden era. I'm Steve Fall. He's Sean Mooney. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
It's the golden age of WWE.